It's going to be a bit more challenging to mark, so we're going to be somewhat flexible with that. So the main idea is to learn from this, okay? So I will not always give you a diagram, but in this case, I decided to do that to make it a little bit easier, right? So this farmer wants to make an enclosure with 3 equal parcels in there, right? And so the long sides, this would have 2 lengths, and it would have 1, 2, 3, 4 widths, okay? 4 cross members like that. If this had been built against a barn or against the river, then obviously we would always choose to do it on one of the long sides, okay? Then it would resort to this. But in this case, it's not mentioning that there's no fence required on either side. So we'll just say that the perimeter in this case is 2 length plus 4 width. We know that our perimeter is 900, right? I kind of urged you to come up with L is equal to something, so I wanted you to isolate L in this case. So you have 2L is equal to 900 minus 4W, okay? And then the last step is to divide both of them by 2 so that this cancels out. So length is really 900 minus 4 width over 2. If you have this, you get 1 mark for that. For this, you get 1 mark. If you messed up, you get 0 there. And that's when it gets tricky, okay? Even for me to mark your work, it gets really tricky because I have to use this, whatever you got here, for everything following. So if you get this wrong, everything else will be different, right? So right now we're going to assume that you made a mistake here, but that everything else is correct, right? And we'll talk about the steps that need to be there. You get 1 mark to fill in this chart. And I give you the widths already, so you didn't have to come up with them. So in this case, the length here would be 900 minus 4 times 50, right? We need to plug in 50 there. And don't forget to divide by 2. So 900 minus, this is 200 here, so that'd be 700 over 2, which ends up being 350. And here's where I want to address a common mistake. This is what a lot of students do. Okay, they go 900 minus 4 times 50 divided by 2. You would get 800 on your calculator, but really there's something wrong with this entry here. You want to have brackets around. Actually, I'm not even going to try this one. I'm just going to say this is how you would type it in if you wanted to do this in one shot. Like that. You have to have brackets around the top, invisible brackets, right? So it's 350, right? Stuff like that you would have addressed that if you did your homework. Then you would have come across that problem if that was a problem for you, right? 900 minus 4 times 100 in this case over 2, and so this is 500 divided by 2, which is 250. So that's what we're after, and you should see a pattern. So let's see what we get next. 4 times 150 divided by 2, and this gives you 600 here. So 900 minus 600 is 300 divided by 2 is 150. So you can see if this is consistent, like this is 50 at a time going up, you should also see a pattern, which is 100, right? A difference of 100, but you'll always see that they're going in opposite directions. I don't know if you've noticed that, but with everything we've done, right, the revenue, right, if the price goes up, the number of items will go down and vice versa, or else you won't have a quadratic. So then this gives you this gives you that, this gives you this. So that would be 1 mark here. If you're at home, For 1A, you get 1 mark to fill in that chart. So far we're out of 2. You do not need to fill in what this amounts to. I did. When I typed it in, I just copied it down. Okay, so that's that. You get 1 mark for that. Now it says determine the equation that relates the length and the area. So we want length, area like that. Okay, every point to be like that. So that means that this goes into L1 and this goes into L2. We're going to go stat calc 5 and write down our equation. If you do that, you get negative 0.5x squared plus 225x. So let's say you made a mistake up here. You lose 1. If you did all of this correctly based on your equation up here, I would award the mark here. Okay, and then I would also award a mark here if I can actually type this in and get the same answer as you. Okay, so that's where it's going to be rather painful to mark these. You simplified the perimeter. Hold on, that's a good question. Yes. Okay. So Barlene is saying over here that she went 900 divided by 2 is 450. 4w divided by 2 is 2, right? So this simplifies to that. Yes, no problem. There's quite often it won't be possible, but if it is, then sure, go for it. Yeah, no problem there. Good point. Good. Bring those questions up. That I have no problems with that. Let's say you fell asleep at the wheel, and you went width into L1 and area into L1 and L2. Your equation will look like this. I would still not give you the equation mark for this, because this is technically the wrong one. So this is not what you want, right? It's just an aside. So 1 mark for the equation. So if you have an equation, give yourself some mark there. So right now we're just looking at the steps, right? The maximum area, I need the vertex. Second trace 4. And my vertex is 225 and 25,312.5. Obviously that will be different for you, right? So the maximum area is 25,312.5 square feet. I need the units. If you don't have the units, take off half a mark for C. It's kind of blurry. I don't know why. That's better. Okay, so there it is. And then what dimensions would result in the maximum area? You base it on what you have already. I know that the length is 225 feet and that the area is that the width is going to be area divided by length. And that's 25,312.5 divided by 225. And that gives you 112.5 feet. Like that. So you get 1 mark for each. This one is a freebie. Whatever you got. So folks at home or here, right? If your vertex is off because you have a different equation, you would lose the mark here for the equation, but I would honor this vertex. And if you grab this y value to state the maximum area, you get the mark there. And what I normally do is, even if it's wrong, I go like this and then I put down step. What that means is that you're taking the right steps. You just made a mistake up here, okay? Actually, yeah. So if I check mark step means that the number is not what it should be based on the original key, but it is correct based on your work, okay? And then, so this and this, whatever you got here for your X value, if you state that here, you get the mark for length. And if you do this work to figure out the width, you get the mark for width, regardless of what your vertex was, because you're understanding what's happening there. So D is out of 2, okay? C is out of 1. B is out of 1. State the domain and range. For your domain, you need the x-intercept. Now, I think it was Francesca that brought it up yesterday, if I remember correctly. But so 225, you get an x-intercept of 450, and that is those are your parameters for your x values, which is your length, and your range is 0 to 25,312.5. Francesca, I think, said, sorry to bring up your name, Francesca, but it was a good point. Can't you just double the vertex, right? Double that number, and that is your x-intercept. That is your x-intercept in this case, which is the largest value of the domain. I would be very careful with that, and you'll see why soon. It's not always going to be like that. So if you recognize, right, because this graph starts at 0, 0, it works. If it starts up here on the y-axis, somewhere up, right here, it's not going to be the case. So I would say it takes a couple of seconds and then you get it right. But if you know what you're doing, go for it. Just tell me that you're doing that, right? Twice the vertex. Okay. Graph the scenario. So you get 2 marks for domain and range there. Take off half a mark if the brackets are wrong. I'm going to go up by 100. That works. I put length in feet. I put area in square feet. And I'm at 0, 0. I'm at 450 here. I'm at 225, so this will be 250. 225 is between those two. I go straight up. I think I'm going to go 10,000 at a time here. So 225, 25,000 is right about there. And don't forget your equation. All right, so this gives you 2 marks. Take off half a mark if you're missing units or labels at all. Any one of these 3 here, right? You take off half. If your scale is off, you take off, I would say, 1 full mark, and that's that. Okay.